In the middle of the dark night, I can't see the sunlight. It's gonna be alright, I won't be afraid, no. When the waves are crashing and lightning is flashing, I'll still be standing, I won't be afraid. 'Cause you light the dark, you fill my heart with courage. When I'm afraid, Jesus, you are my hope. I call your name, you keep me safe, your strength is perfect. I will trust in you alone, you are my hope. You are my hope. Even when I can't see what lies in front of me, I know you're with me, I won't be afraid, no. Even in my weakness, your strength is endless, and I believe it. I won't be afraid, 'cause you light the dark, you fill my heart with courage. When I'm afraid, Jesus, you are my hope. I call your name, you keep me safe, your strength is perfect. I will trust in you alone, you are my hope. You are my hope. You are my hope. I will not fear. I know you're with me. You're always with me. I will not fear. I know you're with me. You're always with me. You light the dark, you fill my heart with courage. When I'm afraid, Jesus, you are my hope. I call your name, you keep me safe, your strength is perfect. I will trust in you alone, you are my hope. You light the dark, you fill my heart with courage. When I'm afraid, Jesus, you are my hope. I call your name, you keep me safe, your strength is perfect. I will trust in you alone, you are my hope. You are my hope. You are my hope.
Hey, Pop Kids. I am big time excited to share today's story with you that comes from the Bible. Just to recap where we've been in our journey through the Bible so far. God created the world and everything in it, including people. God had a plan to bless the whole world through Abraham's family, the Israelites. God rescued the Israelites from Egypt, then put kings in place to lead the people. But the people kept turning away from God over and over again. So God allowed the Israelites to be captured by other nations. But even while the people were captives in a faraway land, there were some men and women who still loved and honored God. Like Daniel, who we talked about last week, and Esther, who we'll look at today. And let me tell you, this story is so amazing that it may as well have come from a comic book. Esther grew up in a land called Persia, but she was Jewish. Her people had been taken as captives. And she and her cousin, Mordecai, still followed God. Now, the king of Persia, Xerxes, once fired his queen just because she didn't show up for a party. For real. Anyhow, so he needed a new queen. King Xerxes searched for a new queen for an entire year. And guess who he chose? Esther. But Esther could have been in real danger if the king didn't like what she believed in the God of her people, the Israelites. So Esther's cousin Mordecai told her not to tell anyone that she came from a Jewish family. Now, King Xerxes promoted a man named Haman to be in charge of all the other nobles in the kingdom. And Haman liked to make all the officials outside the palace bow down to him. Yeesh. But Mordecai refused to bow to Haman. So Haman went to the king and asked him to give an awful order in order to destroy the Jewish people in Persia, the Israelites, who Mordecai and Esther were a part of. Well, the king sent a letter all over the kingdom declaring that on the 13th day of the 12th month, all the Jewish people were to be killed. When Mordecai learned about this terrible decree, he sent a message about it to Esther. Mordecai asked Esther to go to the king and ask him to save the Jewish people. Now, you have to know that in those days, there was a law that if someone approached the king without being summoned or asked to approach him, they could be put to death unless the king reached out his golden scepter. Oof. So Esther explained that law to Mordecai so he would understand that if she went to the king, she would be risking her life. Mordecai responded to her with this from Esther 4:14. What if you don't say anything at this time? Then help for the Jews will come from another place, but you and your family will die. Who knows? It's possible that you became queen for a time just like this. You see, God had put Esther in this position as queen so she could save her people. Pretty cool, huh? Esther believed that she was part of God's plan for just that moment. So Esther told Mordecai to gather the Jewish people together and asked them to be praying for 3 days. And Esther would do the same thing. Then she would approach the king. After all the praying was finished, Esther entered the king's hall, which remember could mean death if the king didn't want to see her. And the king, he reached out the golden scepter. This was a good first sign. The king asked, "What is it, Queen Esther? What do you want?" So Esther started to carry out the plan she had. She invited the king and Haman, remember him, the guy that wrote that nasty decree? She invited them to come to a special banquet. Then she asked the king and Haman to another feast the next day. At the second feast, she told the king, "Your Majesty, I hope you will be pleased to let me live. That is what I want. Please spare my people. That's my appeal to you. My people and I have been sold to be destroyed. We've been sold to be killed and wiped out." The king put it together. Now he understood that the order he had given meant that Esther's people, the Israelites, were about to be wiped out. He said to Esther, "Who is the man who dared to do such a thing?" And Esther told him it was Haman. Well, King Xerxes was so angry that, let's just say that he permanently made sure that Haman wouldn't bother anyone again. Then the king also gave a new order that would allow the Jewish people to be saved. Wowzers. Esther must have been pretty scared to approach the king and ask him to save her people. She knew that her life was on the line and she had no idea what would happen. But like Mordecai said, God had put her in that position for a reason. for a time just like this. Esther stood for what was right, even when she wasn't sure what would happen next. How about you, Pop Kids? Have you ever felt scared about doing the right thing? Something you knew needed to be done, but it was also kind of frightening. Well, Esther's story is a fantastic reminder that in those moments, God might be planning to use you to stand up for what's right, for a time just like this. You can do what you should, even when you don't know what will happen, because God is always there to help us stand for what's right.
Dear God, Esther's story is such an amazing example of courage. We know you gave her that courage, and we know that you can give us that kind of courage too. Help us look around and see things that are wrong, and then give us your strength and courage so we can do something to help make them right. And please help us trust you in those times when we don't know what will happen next. We love you. Thank you for loving us. Amen.